Welcome to the Take the North podcast. I'm David Haugh from 670 Score, the Mully and Haugh Show. Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune at Halas Hall after the first day of veteran minicamp mandatory. Dan, how was the attendance? It looks like everybody who was supposed to be there showed up.
Yeah, good attendance, obviously, as you'd expect for a mandatory minicamp. Your first opportunity to kind of see all of the main performers for this team on the field at the same time. Montez Sweat back after not being here for a good chunk of the offseason. Keenan Allen back. He says he hasn't been around a whole lot during the most recent stretch. And so you get some of those key performers back on the field and you get a little bit better gauge of how things are coming together. And let's be honest, this is going to be a work in progress for this team in a lot of different ways. And that was evident again this afternoon at Halas Hall.
Before we get to observations, Keenan Allen met the media for the first time, I understand. He was a guy who obviously made his first appearance in Bears gear at Caleb Williams Pro Day. Yeah. Now he gets to meet the assembled media. What was your first impression? And did you see anything from the offense, from the three receiver set worth mentioning?
First time that we have gotten to hear from Keenan Allen since the weekend after he was traded here, which was, of course, the weekend that Justin Fields was traded. So a lot's happened in the world of the Chicago Bears since Keenan Allen became a Chicago Bear. And he was very engaging in his 14-minute media session. Maybe later this week or early next week and dig deeper into some of the things he had to say, because it's pretty insightful to kind of listen to him talk about kind of the blessed path he's had in his football career of playing with Phillip Rivers, of playing with Justin Herbert, of knowing what high-level quarterback play in the NFL looks like, and then trying to kind of compare it to a rookie that's got a lot of gifts and it's got a lot of work ahead of him. And so Keenan Allen's insight, certainly notable. I will say that when you watch these guys on the field, there's reason to get excited. One of my observations from today is that Rome Odunze up close is the fluidity and the athleticism and some of the simple things he does as a route runner and as a pass catcher it's eye-catching. And so you compare that with a 10,000-yard receiver like Keenan Allen, with a guy like DJ Moore who's a bottle rocket on every single play, and you say, yeah, there's an opportunity here for Shane Waldron and Caleb Williams to let their imaginations run wild and try to squeeze the most out of this trio.
I'll stay there for a moment, because it was during the 1920 Football Drive episode, the latest one about the draft process, that we were left with the idea, I think maybe intentionally, that Rome Odunze might have been the number 2 player on the Bears draft board. And then I interviewed Daniel Jeremiah from NFL Network with Stacey Dales on Monday on the Mully and Haugh Show. And he, obviously former scout who does a great job of scouting the draft, he referred to Rome Odunze as his number 3 rated player on the draft board. What we're talking about here is the equivalent of the Jamar Chase to Joe Burrow. This is Caleb Williams, Jamar Chase. This is the guy who was drafted 9th, but maybe only because of other needs, other teams served by drafting other players in front of him. If he is that good, does it do anything to ball distribution? Do you think it does anything to the Bears offense? Because as we have seen in the NFC North this week, Justin Jefferson signing a 4-year contract extension worth $110 million guaranteed. You can see why it's important to have wide receivers like Odunze maybe on their rookie contracts as well. Are we talking about that kind of an impact?
Oh, it's certainly super helpful, right? And you want to see kind of how these 3 gel together, how quickly Rome Odunze feels comfortable succeeding at the NFL level. You mentioned the Justin Jefferson contract. Keenan Allen referred to that in his press conference as he was talking about entering his own contract year here in Chicago. And he said that, the market was just reset at my position. And then he gave the assembled media a little bit of eyebrows raised and pretty excited to see what Justin Jefferson got, because if I can continue to play at the level that I've played at in my career, the reward's going to be pretty handsome, whether it's from the Chicago Bears or someone else up the road here in the very near future. So there's a lot there. And this is, as we know, become a passing league, and the rewards for being a good passing team are certainly huge for the players that are part of that passing attack.
Let's stick with the offense before we get to the defense. Nate Davis, you said everyone's there. That includes him. Was he on the practice field? And how did the first string offensive line set up at center?
Yeah, Nate Davis was out there doing a little bit of work in individual periods, did not do anything in the team periods. And so we've seen a lot this spring of Matt Pryor playing right guard for the Chicago Bears. Just put that in the back of your mind as we get closer to the regular season, and understand that the Bears obviously feel like Matt Pryor is a guy that can hold down that spot. Beside him at center position was Ryan Bates today, who seems to be the preferred choice to hold down that position going into the regular season. Obviously, we know that there will be a quote unquote competition, or everyone will have to win their job. And Ryan Bates is no different as Coleman Shelton sits behind him. But it certainly seems like you've got your 5 preferred starters in front of Caleb Williams. And so that's kind of how that's starting to come together up front.
So obviously, the numbers don't mean anything in the early June phase of a mini camp or preparation. But Caleb Williams, um, how would you describe his day? Various social media reports up and down. He
Yeah.
had an interception by Kevin Byard that sailed on him. Matt Eberflus referred to that. You had other instances that were good throws. How would you describe his mixed day?
Yeah, bumpy. Because early in the 7-on-7 period, now again, like our audience needs to understand what 7-on-7 is designed to do. You are a quarterback without a pass rush and nothing to divert your eyes, and you're supposed to get the ball out quick and make throws quick. And there are points where Caleb Williams looks the part, and you see some of the anticipatory throws. You see the ability to rip some shots over the middle to DJ Moore right as he's coming out of his break, and you feel really excited about that. And then in the 11-on-11 period, it can get shaky really quickly, and that happened on multiple occasions today. The interception to Kevin Byard was with a pretty good rush coming, and Caleb just he went through his progressions well, but didn't get the ball out on time and in rhythm the way that the on time in rhythm passing game demands. And the next thing you know, it's sailing over the head of an intended receiver and right into the hands of a proven playmaker in the back end of the defense, in this case, Kevin Byard. And so the Bears finished 11-on-11 work with 2 red zone, 2-minute periods, and they didn't get a first down in either one of them. The first unit with Caleb Williams running the show there. And so you go, yeah, again, we see the gifts, we see the flashes, and then we see the inconsistency and the need for growth that is going to be present for a long time. And so it's just kind of a matter of buckling in. Look, like we had a chance to talk to Cole Kmet after practice as well, David. And I asked him, he's obviously played with a lot of different quarterbacks in his time with the Bears. And so he's seen the changes that occur there, and he's had to adapt. But I think that this roster is ready to compete at a level where it can be hard to calibrate your patience to understand that the bumpiness of bringing along a rookie quarterback is going to force you at times to be frustrated at how slowly it's getting to the level of being a playoff contending team. And Cole said, look, like you just have to have patience. You have to, raise your patience and understand where he's at. And you have to remember where you were as a rookie in a similar state. And you just have to have that empathy for how hard it is to get your feet on the ground in this league, much less at the most difficult position to play in this league.
You mentioned Cole Kmet. He also told a story that will only enhance the legend of Caleb Williams. The fact that Caleb has now made an appearance at Old Crow, Wrigleyville Bar, and led chants of Green Bay sucks. He showed up at DJ Moore's football camp and talked to youths on Sunday because he's a man of the people. And he has such competitiveness, Dan. I hear from Cole Kmet that they closed down the joint at 1 a.m. They were still trying to figure out a winner at Top Golf in Naperville.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was the Naperville one or the Schaumburg one. It
I don't
could have been the Schaumburg one. Yeah,
okay.
don't put these guys places they may not have been.
Yeah, right.
But regardless, like it sounds like there was some heavy competition going, and it got so heated that they had to essentially beg permission to stay past closing time. And as Cole relayed, they didn't leave Top Golf until 1 a.m. Cole did emphasize that he emerged as the winner in whatever competition they were playing out there. A handful of other offensive guys were out there with Caleb and Cole, but there's just another little nugget there that speaks to the quarterback's socialization skills and certainly his fiery competitiveness that everyone in the organization has been drawn to.
Let's talk about the defense. Obviously, the secondary last week at the OTAs, they were vocal, they were visible, and they made their impact felt. I wonder how the defense fared today with the addition and the return of Montez Sweat, whose presence I think was awaited. Nobody I think was worried, but obviously he showed up, and he's the biggest, I think the most valuable defensive player they have, the multiplier, if you will. And he was there. How'd the defense look?
There was a small skirmish today, which is very rare for minicamp. We didn't have pads on. We're not doing anything of that nature. It looked like DeMarcus Walker was in the middle of it. You call it a flare-up, dust-up, skirmish, squabble, whatever you want to call it.
Melee.
A little moment of raised tempers. Montez Sweat didn't do a whole lot as it relates to team drills today, and it sounds like he's still kind of ramping up in the Bears program. He's been working off in his own individual program back home for a little while now, and they're trying to kind of blend him in here, and didn't do a whole lot today when it came to team drills. The defense as a whole looks like they're playing really well. And again, Keenan Allen, we can hear from him later in the week. He said, defenses are annoying because in settings like this, they make a play and they spend the next 40 seconds telling you about it and barking about it and hooting and hollering. And if somebody on offense catches a first down, they give the ball to the ref and run back to the huddle to get the next play call. And so it can get a little bit annoying when there's so much barking and hollering from one side of the ball and the offense isn't doing the same thing. Again, like I say, this defense at full strength is ready. They look playoff ready to me. Now, my colleague Colleen Kane was quick to remind me that we've had many a year out here where the May and June defensive intensity was really, really high and made you feel like big things were coming. She reminded me of the takeaway bucket that Sean Desai had implemented. I think that was back in 2021. And then ultimately you get to the regular season and the takeaway bucket didn't fill up the way that we thought it would based on the performances in the spring. So yeah, you kind of have to shrug through a lot of this part of the program. But I think with the return of 9 starters there and the understanding of what Matt Eberflus wants to get done on defense, they're starting off on the right foot, and hopefully that continues through August and into September.
It's really nitpicky, or not even nitpicky, but it's looking for a different level of detail because it hasn't even begun the padded part of the practice session. But I think the coaches that are new, anybody in terms of stand out, are you watching anybody closer than the next? Eric Washington comes to mind because of his reputation as a technician. I do wonder how much Shane Waldron and Kerry Joseph are interacting on a regular basis with Caleb Williams. How would you describe just the overall cohesiveness and chemistry of the coaching staff?
Yeah, well, so there was a moment today where it was after one of the bumpy 11-on-11 periods where Caleb and Shane gathered on the sideline, and there was nothing tense about it, but it was clearly a student pupil moment of explaining, okay, here's where you should have been with your eyes, here's where you should have been with the ball, and here's where we have to improve going forward. And you just kind of gather some of those anecdotes and just kind of look for the interaction between those guys, because their relationship is going to be paramount to how quickly this offense gets off the ground. I've had some conversation with Shane, and we'll share some of that later in the summer as we work on something a little bit bigger on Caleb Williams for the Tribune. But he has been struck by just how thirsty for criticism and thirsty for coaching that Caleb Williams has been. And when you are somebody as a coach who prides yourself on being a teacher, to have an engaged and active student like that, it's like a can of Red Bull, it just gets your blood pumping and you're like, okay, this is a guy who wants the information. This is the guy who wants the feedback. This is the guy who thrives off the criticism. And so that really puts just a catalyst in everything you're doing to try to develop a quarterback. And one of the things Shane told me earlier this week was that Caleb has no defense mechanisms when you correct him on things. And so it's, not everybody likes to be corrected, particularly when you have these bumpy days, but the ability to kind of just be really open-minded and open to the feedback that you're getting, I think is going to be a plus to helping Caleb along what is going to be a difficult climb to establish himself as a top-tier starter in this league.
Before we get to anything that Ryan Poles said that was interesting on the Adam Schefter podcast, got a comment on a few of those remarks that he said in the pod. What anything else that stands out during the practice today at House?
I'm going to give you one small nugget here, and studs can earmark this for August or September. But Ian Wheeler, undrafted rookie running back, looks like he's shot out of a cannon on some of these kickoff return plays. And so I would not be surprised. I'm telling you this right now on June 4th. Write it down. Ian Wheeler may return a kick for a touchdown in the preseason.
Wow.
And then we can have discussion. So you like timestamp it.
That means he'll make the team.
Mark it and see what happens. Look, like that running back room is loaded right now. You've got Roschon Johnson, you've got DeAndre Swift, you've got Khalil Herbert, you've got Kari Blasingame as a fullback. You have Travis Homer as an established special teams weapon in this league. There's not a lot of spaces in that room to carve out a role for yourself, but if you can, find a way to contribute in a big way in a phase of the game that the NFL is trying to revive, well, then you're going to catch some people's attention. And so I'm just giving you that as a small, obscure nugget, but that's what June 4th is for, small, obscure nuggets from mandatory minicamp.
It is so noted and marked. So we will come back to that when he scores a touchdown or makes the 53-man roster. All right, so Ryan Poles appeared on the Adam Schefter podcast. He said a lot of interesting things. It's his time to take a victory lap, if you will. He's had a very good offseason. So let's start with just talking about a few of the things. We'll highlight 3 different specific cuts. He talked about how being at a Blackhawks game for Chris Chelios' jersey retirement back in February resulted in him answering questions from curious Bears fans. Remember, this is before they traded Justin Fields.
I went to the Chelios jersey retirement down at United Center, and I was walking with my family, and we were going through kind of the main concourse, trying to get to this door to go up to the level we were sitting. And one guy, and they've been drinking for hours now because there was a ceremony hours prior to the game. And guy turns to me and is like, "You better not trade that pick." And then someone from upstairs, like on the second level, was like, "Don't you move back and trade." And all of a sudden I had like 100 people yelling all of these different things that we should do. And it really just kind of showed you what Chicago's all about, the amount of passion, the advice that our fans have. And I love it. It got a little weird. I was trying to get my 6-year-old, out of that mess, but it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool just to see the passion for the city. And then when you make a decision, the city backs you up and they're all in, and you can feel the energy. I've been downtown a few times over the last few weeks, and there's really positive energy, and everyone's fired up for the season.
You'll remember that Ryan Poles had to do some work at home with his other child, I think the older son, when they traded Justin Fields, because he was the favorite player on the Bears. And so tough offseason for Ryan Poles, but I would say that he compartmentalized well and did his job.
No, clearly. And he had mentioned that anecdote a little bit to some of us at the Combine right after it had happened, because that was I think it was the week before the Combine that he was there at the Chelios retirement. And what I've liked about Ryan is he understands the passion of this fan base, and he also understands his role of kind of creating the positive energy that exists now. And so to make the moves that they've made this offseason, to navigate it with conviction and confidence in the vision that you have, I think it just speaks to kind of his confidence and self-assuredness of where he wants his team to go and the path that he's driving them down to get there. And so kind of cool for him to be able to reflect on that, which it's been a wild 4 months, to be honest with you, 4 or 5 months here in the off season. But you're right. There is so much positive energy here right now that it's hard to deny, and it's hard not to feel.
He's made a lot of big decisions, and in a lot of those decisions, he's sought the counsel of a former teammate, former college teammate, guy you might have heard of, Matt Ryan, CBS analyst, former Falcons quarterback, a guy that was in the league a long time and played with Ryan Poles at Boston College. You could get advice from worse guys, especially when you don't have a lot of institutional knowledge about the quarterback position in your own building. So this is what Ryan Poles had to say about seeking out the advice from an old friend.
I talked to Matt a lot through this entire process. I've hit Matt up on the last 3 years, really just not just this draft process of a quarterback, but also the locker room, coaching, what works, what doesn't work. And he's had some incredible feedback for me to keep perspective from the locker room side of things and the player side of things, to make sure that I'm doing right by the locker room and keeping that tight, that group tight and understanding, and staying transparent with what we do as well. So he's been a huge resource for me.
And did he have any recommendations or evaluations of Caleb Williams that aided you in the process here, Ryan?
Yeah, he had watched the guys, and he knows talent, and knew that there's a rare skill set, just from watching the tape. There's things like Matt was saying, like things that he couldn't do, at all. But with that said, also knowing what works in the league and what doesn't work in the league, what throws you can get away with, what you can't get away with, reaction times, processing speed. You can see those things and what transfer and what doesn't. So, he was able to kind of give me a couple things along the way.
That's pretty cool, Dan. I think that Matt Ryan's well respected and a guy that you could envision moving from the broadcast booth or studio into a front office one day, just because of the way he's always been known as a very level-headed, leader and a guy that was a cerebral quarterback with a ton of talent. So you could pick your friends more foolishly. Matt Ryan involved in the decisions, not a bad thing.
No doubt. I mean, he's an MVP in this league. He had a 25-point lead in the Super Bowl once. I don't know if you heard about that game. I think it was 28-3 at
Something
one
like
point.
that.
And so
Yeah.
he's right on the cusp of reaching the mountaintop of the league. But it's really cool that relationship has, flourished through the years since their time together at Boston College. And certainly when you're trying to get some feedback and some candor from somebody that's been inside an NFL locker room for a long time, who's played the position that you're trying to study, it's really nice to be able to have those forthright conversations with a guy like Matt Ryan. And I know Ryan doesn't take that relationship for granted, and it's one of those things that great leaders have. They've got connections to people that can help point them in directions when they have big questions, and so pretty cool, as you said.
Last thing we'll hear from Ryan Poles and the Adam Schefter podcast was just what we spoke to earlier. Caleb Williams fitting in quickly, not only in the Chicagoland area, with whether it's at a bar or a football camp or Top Golf, but most importantly, how he fits in the locker room and how he has ingratiated himself quickly with teammates. That was a concern. You go way back. What's it going to be like in a locker room that really liked Justin Fields? Well, Ryan Poles spoke to this, and it sounded like it was no big deal.
I'm a big locker room guy, so I'm convinced you can't fool a locker room, and you can't fool them, especially over years. And when you talk to his teammates in the way that they just lit up when you brought his name up, it wasn't even about the talent. It was about the man and about caring for others, being selfless, competitive, bringing the best out of people. It was not, I've seen guys fake, he's okay, but when people light up and they talk about someone as a person and as a leader, that means a lot to me, holds a lot of weight. So when we started hitting 10, 15 different sources that were saying very similar things about him, but in different stories and in different locations, that's the proof that I needed to really get to where we needed to go. And that's take him over first overall.
Of all the reports about Caleb Williams and his progress, of all the descriptions of the 7-on-7s and all the passing exploits, all those things, probably the way that he has fit in with teammates as quickly as he has might be the most encouraging because of all the concerns that people had prior to his arrival.
Well, and it speaks to his understanding of what that position is. And you and I have talked about this for years on this podcast and outside of this podcast, that when you're playing quarterback in the NFL and you're the QB1 on your depth chart, you have to be the hub of energy, not just for an offense, but for an entire football team and an entire organization. And Caleb embraces that. He understands that when you set goals as lofty as his goals are set, that you have to back them up with not only hard work, but connection, and connection is a big part of playing this sport, and particularly at that position. I think it's worth emphasizing here, and while we're on this topic, that the Bears really leaned heavily on Francis St. Paul and Reese Hicks, two of their scouts that did most of the early work on Caleb Williams from his time at Oklahoma and USC. And look, like, you put on Caleb Williams college tape and you go, talent, right? Like, it jumps off at you and you say it's there. Well, then you start doing the background and you find out he's smart. You find out he's tough. You find out he's resilient. You find out he's competitive. He's passionate. And all of these things then get corroborated by people that played with him, people that have been around him in these various programs. And all of a sudden it gives you that full-throated confidence to say, yeah, this is 100% the direction we need to go down. Obviously the Bears made their way down that path January, February, March, and then drafted Caleb Williams in April. And now here we are now trying to get him off the ground in a way that is logical. And so I think so far so good. But again, this is a really steep and really long mountain, really tall mountain to climb. And so there's a lot of work ahead that the superlatives will take you so far. And then there's a lot that comes with getting yourself the rest of the way. Anything else to add, Dan, before we wrap this up? Yeah, I will just say this on the Caleb Williams topic. There was a decent amount of time spent after practice today by Matt Eberflus talking about just working on cadence. And he used the term, weaponizing cadence and and trying to make, the ability to get up to the line of scrimmage and keep a defense off guard a priority for a quarterback. And then Cole Kmet said, it sounds silly, but most of these guys come out of college not having done really any of this. They haven't had to master a snap count or a cadence and figure out how to get on the same rhythm with their offensive linemen and the other players around them. And so it's just another little nugget that speaks to how much minutia is involved I don't know if minutia is the right phrase, but how much, little details involved in mastering this position. And the Bears are going to spend a lot of time here in minicamp, next week's rookie-centric OTA, and then they'll send Caleb off on his own, trying to really just dive deep into some of these little things that make a difference in playing that position at the highest level.
Last thing I have is that we heard today who the Bears going into the Hall of Fame will use as their presenters. Devin Hester will use his mother to present him. Steve McMichael will go in after a speech presented by Jarrett Payton, our friend from WGN in Chicago, obviously the son of Walter. And Julius Peppers, former Bear and Packer and Panther, will use his agent and friend. His name is Carey?
Carl Carey.
Carl Carey, excuse me. Carl Carey will introduce Julius Peppers. So we have that news. A huge honor for Jarrett Payton. Looking forward to that speech. And obviously kind of sweet that Devin Hester is going to ask his mom.
Yeah, it'll be nice to hear from all of them. And look, we're inside of 2 months now in terms of the arrival date in Canton. And so it's just around the corner. And it'll be, I mean, that we talk about Hard Knocks and everything else. Like that is a goosebump filled weekend, and it's going to be almost triply such this year because of all the things that center around the Chicago Bears playing in that game, bringing 3 of their former players here, all the things that come along with that. I know I'm really looking forward to it, and it should be an emotion-packed weekend.
Great stuff, Dan. Really appreciate the reports from Haugh and the Bears' first minicamp practice. We'll have more later this week as we get more observations. Another day on Wednesday, and then they're going to convene for more OTAs until more OTAs next week, but that'll be more rookie-centric. So for Adam Studzinski, our producer, Dan Wiederer from Haugh, I'm David Haugh from the Mully and Haugh Show. You can catch us on your free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast, and you can watch us on 670 Scores YouTube page. Thank you for listening to Take the North.
Great talk. See you out there.